Hey, so today we are with the Polyend Synth and we're following along with that engine series. We are looking at phase distortion, which is a really cool way of manipulating a sound file, sort of how wavetable FM works, but taking a completely different spin and taking it into new directions by controlling the phase and manipulating that through a carrier wave. So it's got some very unique textures and some really interesting ways it works. So we're going to go through every single setting on that synth engine, go through how it works and do a bit of a demo at the end to show how it can shine. But enough talking, let's get straight into it. Alright, we're back with the Polyend Synth, and today we are going to talk about my favorite synthesizer on here, the Phase Distortion Phase. And really, this one has got a lot of unique character, and it was a bit of a flavor at the back of the day because like Yamaha, or we've got the Wavetable FM on here, that was really focused on using frequency modulation to create a source. And back in the day, Casio, they wanted to get in on this FM, but you can't just copy someone else's idea. So they come up with a way of using a Etch-a-Sketch sort of deal to distort a signal. So they've got the X, you got a Y, and then you can use that to bend the signal in some really unique and character-rich way. So I've just got this set up with a default patch with the pads going on. Just want to go through every single point on here so you get a bit of a sense of what's going on. But first, I'm just going to go to one channel because we've got two phase distortion synths that run in parallel. So right now it's just focused on shape 1, and by shape, this top knob here, we can actually change how that shape works. So it's all like a wavetable you scrub through, so there's a variety that you can pick from. I'm just going to keep it at the start here, and then you have that X and Y, and it's all like the Etch-a-Sketch. You can actually bend the signal, so you got your X axis that you can control, and then you got your Y axis as well, so you can use that to sort of sculpt in where you want that signal to go. So that's in essence what phase distortion is. What you're doing is you're taking a signal and using these X and Y coordinates to push the sound around to create something that's really unique. But with that, you do need a signal, and that's where this model comes in. As you can see, there's quite a few of them, but if you look at the Casio CZ series, that's a phase distortion synth, and that's why we have an OG saw and an OG square. And as you see, if I tweak these around, you get the saw, you can see the square, and it does change up depending on that model, so you just got to keep that in mind. But you got a smooth hematite, which is really useful. You got a squared and a linear. I believe this is just the exponential version, then you have a linear version. So if you look at the Etch-a-Sketch on this one, it's quite linear how it's moved around, but then you got the square one, which is using more of a parabolic exponential curve, which is big fancy words that makes the line a little bit smoother. And then you come to this last one, which is a really cool thing where it's taking that hematite model, but we've got some nice FM goodness, and you can get some really cool tones out of that, and I really enjoy that one. So just with those, and you have two of those chains, so you can mix two lots together, two lots of modulation sources, you can get a lot just out of this panel here. So we'll jump to the second panel, and this is where we have more of those options. It's still following that two channel structure here with a few bits of flavor on the side. So starting from the top, we have reset, which is just telling us if we hit a button, that oscillator is going to start from the same point again. So if we turn that on like that, that means when we hit a note, that cycle is going to start from the original point. So some nice timing things there. We have two tune knobs here, so I'll just put that back in tune there. Or we can drop it down an octave, so we can do something like that. And we have character, and this sort of plays off that shape. So just to be clear, this one here, if I just change the character, you can see how it's changing that, and they're wavetables that we're mixing together. So we've got quite a few different wavetables to work with. If we go back to the original engine panel, that's what the shape is doing here, is it's going through that wavetable and selecting the waveform, and these models are signal carriers that you apply to the shape. So that's how we got like a triangle wave or a saw wave that we can use to modulate sound. So it's kind of like FM, but just different enough that Yamaha back in the day couldn't come after Casio. And yeah, going with that, we have two other parts to this. We have a D tune. So if you want a nice chorus effect or some nice little detune there. We also have a fine tune. If you need to bump it into a certain frequency, you can do that as well. And if we go into the third panel, we have a glide. We have a glide time, so if we can turn that on, just give a bit of glide time. So you can hear how it's sort of slurping into that little area, and then we have our volume control for the oscillators themselves, and that's the engine part. We have access to some nice filters on here, and like with any sort of filter, you usually have a cutoff, so this allows us to control like the sound going in. It's currently got a low pass. We can see how it's working, so we can tune in the sound. We can apply some resonant, so I can get some bit of a buzz. We'll just open it back up because we do have a variety of different types of filters on here. So we've got a bunch of low pass ones that are modulating some of the really cool filters of yesteryear, so use them for flavor. But we do have some high pass filters as well, so we can sculpt out some of the low end. We have some band pass filters that we can use to like just get that frequency that we want. And then we have a nice little notch filter at the end, so this gives us a lot of control. And then we do have a bit here that we can use the envelope that's controlling the cutoff. We'll talk about that in a sec, but we can use that to modulate our sound here and not having to go into the mod itself. So moving on to envelopes, because we just talked about, we have a few different envelopes. So the amp envelope is the one that is used to control the volume coming in and out. So it's sort of like an in and out, but we can use that to add a bit of attack. The decay is like where it's going to come back in, so I'll just drop the sustain. So you can have it very plucky. We have our sustain, so if we hold our note, that's controlling how loud that hold is. And then we have release as well, so if we take our finger off, it's like really short and snappy, or we can extend that right out as well. So that's for the volume. And then if we jump into the second one, this is the filter envelope. So this was controlling the filter up here with that amount there, so you can use those to control each other there. And then we have an auxiliary envelope that we can apply using our mods here. Like our auxiliary envelope, we have our invisible hands, and alongside that we've got a bunch of LFOs that we can help. We've got two that we can work with. And to start with, we have sync. So if we want to sync it to BPM, or are we syncing that to a frequency, because we do have the tempo knob there. So if you turn that on, it's going to change how the frequency knob works. So you got hertz, or if you got ratios, it's going to work per beats per minute. So you can use that to control how the cycles are coming through, and that will work with MIDI. So if you got a MIDI signal coming in, you just got to change the internal clock to an external one. Next, we have a waveform. So we have a variety of different waveforms that we can use to apply to our signal. Like random hold, that will create like a scattering based on frequency. And then we have our re-trigger. So like the trigger or reset before, if we turn that on and like hit the note, every time that is going to go, it's going to sync with that key press. One shot, so it's going to play one cycle from the note hit, and when you release, it will stop playing, and then you'll go on to the next one, but it won't keep cycling. So that's what re-trigger is. And if you're running out of envelopes, it's a really nice option to just like have this ramp down, so you can like do a faux envelope from here. And then free running, it's just going to keep going. Nothing that you do here is going to change it. And the lucky last thing is our mod matrix, which we hold shift and go mod, and that's going to open up. And we have 6 areas that we can route those invisible hands from the amp envelope and the LFO. We can use that to route it around in here. So if I just go in here and select LFO 1, put it to the X mod, now I've got it set quite high. You can sort of hear how it's playing, but this gives us a bunch of different ways that we can route around, and we got 2 channels of that. So all those sort of matrices, we can really apply that to how this area is working up here. So there's a lot of sonic potential. So the last area I haven't really touched on is using these C knobs, or they're like macros. So if you're live playing, or you just want to tweak up the sound or creating a really nice patch, they are a must to have in your little patch there. So what you need to do is click the rotary encoder and come down to macros, and you've got a bunch here. So you got 3 macros which line up with these 3 knobs here. You can give them a nice name and they will pop up here. We'll talk about that in a sec. But velocity is how hard you hit the thing, and then is how much you push the thing. So there's a little bit that you can do down here, but we'll just stick with the top one. So as you can see, we can come down here and edit the name and just make sure that you give it a very good, well descriptive name, just because it does pop up there when you do it. And then all you need to do to start assigning macros is you press the button, you go to the area of the synth that you want. So I might do shape and just touch it, and that will apply up here that you can work with. And you got 5 of them to work with, and you have a variety of different, like bipolar or unipolar. So does it go left and right or up and yeah, a variety of different ways that you can control it. And then you use these knobs here to adjust the signal. So when you start playing, what I like to do is just make sure that when I'm doing it, I make sure it's all in the on position. Then I come into the macro and then I start tweaking all the sound for that second part, turn it all the way back to test the original sound and see how it transitions across. But that in itself gives you a really nice patch on the phase synthesizer, and you can get a lot out of this thing. So instead of talking about what it can do, let's have a listen at some of the demos on here. So I hope that's given you a little bit of inspiration to use some phase distortion in your next project. Like, there is a lot to be had in this machine, but phase distortion just adds a lot of grit and some really nice textures. And it's one of those synth models, once you start understanding how distorting the phase will shape the waveform, you're going to get a lot out of this machine, and you can really start experimenting. It has been something I really wanted to bring into this back room. Like, I do have a couple of VSTs to work with, like the Casio CZ, but it's just nice to have something that I can touch and hold. So if you did enjoy this one, definitely give it the thumbs up. It does tell the algorithm to point this content to people that's probably looking at how to learn these engines. And I do have a variety of these engines now, so if you want to learn some of the other ones, just go through my channel and have a look there. And also, if you have any comments or queries about this synth engine, please feel free to leave them down below. I do go down there and try and answer as many questions as possible and build like a body of resource for how we can use these engines and get the most out of them. So in the end, I hope you enjoyed this one. I do have a variety of content, especially for the Polyend Synth here, so if you're looking for that, I look forward to seeing you next time.